Hello for the 15th week in Ordinary Time, only using the Gospel Mark, chapter 6, verses 1 to 6, and talk about unclean spirits, unclean spirits, because that's in the middle of the Gospel there, the first part of the Gospel, where Jesus says, Jesus summoned the 12 and began to send them out two by two, and gave them authority over unclean spirits. What's unclean spirits? Sometimes I think maybe the closest thing we get to unclean spirits is at Halloween time, where it's spooky, unclean spirit, ghosts, haunted houses. And that's our concept of unclean spirits. But I don't think that is what Mark means. Mark uses unclean spirits often, more so than all of the other three evangelists put together. Unclean spirits. Well, let me give you a little bit of a history with the Jews before Christ and during Christ relative to unclean and clean. People, places, and things that were clean could host and safely encounter the divine presence. So if you were clean, the person or the place or the thing could host divinity. And that primarily was seen in the temple. The temple was ultimate clean. And the temple was so pure and clean that the Spirit of God dwelt there perpetually. That's why they carried around the traveling tabernacle in the desert, the Ark of the Covenant. That's why they built the temple, the Ark of the Covenant. That's why they put in the 10 Commandments and the staff of Aaron and the manna. And that place was clean, and that was the holiest and cleanest place on the face of the earth. Not only a place like the temple, but the people, the Jewish people, all of the Jews who followed the Torah, the first five books of the Bible, the Old Testament, those people, if they followed the Torah, they were clean. If they didn't, they were unclean. Over and above that, the people, the cities, the villages, and the land, that was clean if those people on that land adhered to the covenant with Yahweh. That He's the God, I am the Lord your God, you shall not have strange gods before me. If they believed that and followed that and abided by the covenant, they were clean. Interesting. The desert. The desert was considered the most unclean place on the face of the earth. Well, in the desert, ultimately that was unclean because that was a place where they had all these wild animals, haunting evil spirits. Remember, Christ went out into the desert and was tempted by the devil. In the desert, the three temptations. Well, that's then, and they really believed that, clean and unclean. I don't know what we consider today, abuse, sexual abuse, unclean, mental illness, at least in the past, unclean, suicide, unclean, and probably the biggest, drug addiction, unclean. We will not be at peace. We will not have loving relationships if we are totally hung up on drug addiction. Clean and unclean, and evil spirits and good spirits. Let me tell you something real quick. I live right now in a house that's well over 100 years old. And I've been going on 30 years living in this house. And in the beginning, at this house, I moved in alone, 4 acres, old, and became a lover of this place, still here. But one strange thing used to happen in the early days, and that was in the afternoon, around 5 o'clock, a little before, a little after, I would hear a rumble and a sound, and I could even feel the house shake a little bit. And I started to think, what's going on here? And it was, couldn't figure it out. 100 years old, who lived in this house? Who died in this house? Was anybody killed in this house? What the heck is going on in this house? When I'm sipping my scotch around 5 in the afternoon. Well, I'd put it out on my mind, but then it would come back. It wasn't every day, but not because I wasn't even there at this time, but it wasn't every day. But it happened enough where I said, what is going on in this house? Well, one day, around 5, before or after, I was sitting down there with a couple and talking to this couple, about preparation for marriage or their counseling of some kind. And all of a sudden, the 3 of us were there, and I heard this rumble, and I felt it a little bit heavier than normal. I said, did you hear that? Did you hear that? Yeah. What is that? It's been happening ever since I moved in here. Well, the guy said, Father, come on. Don't you realize that a mile or so down Versailles Road is a rock quarry? And every day when they need new rocks, they set off dynamite deep in the ground and blow the side of the hill out to get new rocks. And you hear that slight sound, you feel that slight murmur or quake in your house, almost 2 miles away. After years of thinking, do I have a haunted house? Are there evil spirits in this house? Or what? Well, let me get back to what I think is unclean and ask you to think about the same thing. I think everything is unclean that is not in the will of God. If you do not do the will of God, that's unclean. If you do the will of God the way you've been created in His own image and likeness, you're clean. So if you're clean, you should be able to love better. You should be at peace. And you should be clean. That's the basic message of why Christ came. So we can live according to the way we were made. That's clean to me. The opposite of that, unclean, I think interesting, the devil. Everything that is unclean is diabolical, is the devil. Everything that's not in the will of God is the devil. The devil made me do it. A lot of people blame all the problems, the evil, being unclean, on the devil. Well, if you want to believe in that personification of that evil and the devil, that's fine. Just don't blame God. But I would rather look inside myself and see where I am unclean. Oh, we have another phrase, the world, the flesh, and the devil. Once again, at least it's not blaming God, but it's the world, the flesh, and the devil out there. That's what's unclean. That's okay too. But maybe unclean is all of negative isms, terrorism, hedonism, communism, capitalism, materialism, all those isms. Not the will of God. The will of God is positive. It's love, peace, and forgiveness. So in Mark's gospel, when Jesus sends out his apostles or disciples 2 by 2 and says, I give you power over unclean spirits. What does an unclean spirit mean for you? Or how do you think unclean spirits are in the world? Well, too long already. Have a good day.